Welcome to Back on the Broomstick,
a modern witch's spoken word grimoire,
where two witchy friends from way back are reconnecting to their pagan roots after a long period of mundanity.
We're rewalking the path of the wise and trying out all the latest spells, rituals, and magical theory in today's witchcraft and pagan practices.
So grab your wand and your incense,
your cauldron and your crystals,
and join us
as we get
Back on the Broomstick.
Hi, and welcome to Back on the Broomstick. I'm Layla, and on this episode, we'll be discussing Imbolc, a Celtic cross-quarter holiday celebrating the very first stirrings of life and the lengthening light. And this year, we'll be focusing on the Greek myth of Demeter and Persephone.
And I'm Chelle, and Imbolc is great. The myth of Demeter and Persephone is great, but let's just not forget, it is also Layla's birthday. So yeah. Welcome. Here we are. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's almost my birthday. Imbolc, February 1st, is known the world over as Layla's birthday. It is the day when the daylight is lengthening and the first stirrings of flowers and all the little baby creatures are being born. And it's all because of me. Thank you. That's the end of the episode. We're glad you came.
And it's also when Layla is even yet older than I am.
That's right. I continue to be way older than Chelle. Super, super old. Real quick tangent, I promise. So that reminds me of a funny story. Now keep in mind, dear listeners, that I am like 5 foot nothing. I am very, very short. And my friends, I am, Chelle included, are very, very tall.
I have like Amazon female like genes or something. I'm tall and produce tall children.
And your daughter found out that I was the oldest person in the room, and she could not believe it because by my height, she knew I had to be the youngest. And I still love your daughter the best because of that.
I actually remember that. And I feel like at the time she was maybe 10 at the most and was actually taller than you at that point.
Yeah.
And now that my daughter is older and a mother herself, God, she towers over you.
She does.
Everybody towers. I don't even know anybody who's your height.
Yeah. So the short queen, that is me. Yes, thank you. It is my birthday. It is also Breed's Day or Brigid's Day, the goddess Brigid, goddess of the wells, the hearth, of smithcraft, of crafting.
And another thing I'm totally fascinated with, Groundhog's Day. And it is not just a hysterical movie either. I totally dig the fact that we as a people rely on a groundhog to dictate our belief in future weather. I am all for the groundhog. I am all for Punxsutawney Phil. And yeah, for me, that is also an equal part of Imbolc.
Especially now that I am a Pennsylvania resident, Saint Punxsutawney is definitely one of my minor gods. I would love to boop his little nose. He's so cute.
Praise to Punxsutawney Phil, folks.
Bring spring to us. But that brings us back to why we're here. And that's because it's not spring yet. It's freaking cold. Right now, we're in the midst of one of those polar vortexes. So it's really, really cold.
Like, I don't mean to be one of those hypocritical Northeasterners, but right now, as we speak, as I am on the waves of air right now, a snowstorm is descending on us, and I'm not happy. We're supposed to get 8 inches in the next 8 hours. And like, no, come on. But it is hard to kind of see those stirrings of spring when there's 8 inches on the brink.
Right? Exactly. So this is the very end. Sometimes people say that it gets worse this time of year because the Cailleach, the old woman winter, is not quite ready to let go. This is the time when you start to see the very first inklings of spring, if you're lucky.
There's a visual for this Sabbath that I love. Say you cut the sky, the ground, the earth in a little side view, the tree out on top with the snow-covered land, and then there's a little rabbit hole, and then you see like this cross section of the first stirrings of animal growth, of plant growth, of all of that kind of under the ground still, but those stirrings are beginning. They haven't popped out. There's freaking snow out there, man. It's cold out there, but on the inside, on the underneath, things are starting to stir, kind of like magically or mentally you're starting to plant your seeds, but you haven't like done the outward stuff yet because it's damn cold.
That's a great way to look at this time of year is through the lens of myth and metaphor. because things are starting to stir, even if you can't see them. And the Greek myth of Demeter and Persephone is what's called an etiological myth. And basically, that's a story that's told to explain a natural phenomenon. So, this myth, we've talked about it before in our Hecate episode. I'll link that in our old Imbolc episodes down below. But this myth is basically that Demeter, the goddess of grains and harvest, life and the earth, basically.
I always felt that she was very, very similar to Hecate.
They're absolutely besties because Hecate helps search for and then later protects Persephone. But Hecate is the goddess of magic, crossroads, the night, the underworld, witchcraft, and liminal spaces. Demeter is the goddess of agriculture, fertility, and the cycles of life and death. She is very deeply tied to the earth, its cycles, and its abundance. And they're both goddesses of transitions. Hecate at the crossroads of spiritual and the physical, and Demeter through the cycles of life, death, and rebirth.
Yeah, very parallel.
Persephone is her young daughter, just come into womanhood. She's just barely a young woman, and she is promised in marriage by Zeus to Hades, and Hades steals her away.
But she really did kind of fall in love with him. I understand that he kind of took
Are
her
you
because
going there? Are you really going to go there?
it's not all kidnapping and bad. I'm just saying.
All right, left
Do we
turn.
really have differing views on this? I never knew
We're going to
this.
take a left-hand turn and we're going to go over the myth
I
first.
never knew this.
The original myth of Hades and Persephone is literally called the Rape of Persephone.
I didn't know that. I swear to God, I didn't know that.
That's the thing, is a lot of people don't. It's the rape of Persephone. And some people will say that the old word of rape just means to kidnap, but that's just whitewashing the whole story. She was kidnapped to be his bride. She was kidnapped and raped and kept against her will. And in the story, she cried and lamented and wanted nothing to do with Hades. She just wanted to go home to her mother. She's a young girl, 12, give or take.
Shit, like I totally have a totally different take on this. Oh my God.
So the historical myth is not great. It's not great at all. And she did want to go back to her mother. There are some redeeming qualities because while she didn't want to be kidnapped or raped, obviously, she did grow to accept her position and became the queen of the underworld and accepted her duties there. Okay, let me tell you the whole myth first. The original myth says that Demeter, goddess of agriculture, was living blissfully on the earth with her daughter Persephone in basically an eternal abundance and eternal summer. And one day, as Persephone and her best friend, a nymph, were walking through a field of flowers, Hades burst up from the ground on his chariot, nabbed Persephone in a violent abduction that was so violent that her best friend, this nymph, cried herself into a literal puddle of tears. And when Demeter found out that her daughter was missing, she was distraught and searched the world over for her. And what she didn't know was that Persephone's father had given her to Hades. And as the search went on, Demeter basically stopped working, and the crops and the plants started to die. The weather got darker and colder until it was only winter all the time. Demeter was consumed with depression over the loss of her child, and she pretty much stopped all work as goddess of grain and growing things. And in the underworld, Hades was busy trying to persuade Persephone that, hey, I abducted and raped you, but I'm not a bad guy. You should stay here. You should like it. It's a great place. Meanwhile, Persephone is missing her mother. She's missing the earth. She's refusing to eat or drink anything because she knows that if you eat something in the underworld, that you have to stay forever. So while this is going on, all the gods are freaking out over the earth going cold. And they go to Demeter to ask her to make the earth alive and fertile again, and she refuses. She's too sad. So then they go to Zeus, and they're like, hey, Demeter's really depressed. And Zeus is finally like, fine, I'll send Hermes, the messenger god, who also ferries souls to the dead. I'll send him down to Hades and tell him to send Persephone back to her mother. So Hades knows he's going to lose the woman that he abducted. He decides he's going to trick her into staying. So while he's telling her that, hey, Zeus said you get to go back to your mom, Persephone is so excited. And Hades says, why don't you have some of this honeyed pomegranate? And she eats just a bit of it, 6 seeds. Just 6 seeds. When she goes up to her mother, her mother realizes that Persephone has changed and that she's eaten something in the underworld. And because of this, they make an agreement that Persephone will spend half the year with her mother and the other half in the underworld. And so when Persephone is with her mother, we have spring and summer, and there's abundance and life and growing things. And then when Persephone travels down to her husband Hades, the earth starts to die and go silent, and we get fall and winter. So this explains that transformation of the seasons. That's the traditional myth.
Yeah, I've always known the story to be more a little different. That yes, that Zeus had kind of promised one of his daughters. I do get that, but that Hades and Persephone, every once in a while, he would come up from the underworld and they would interact. He fell for her, went to Zeus and was like, "Look, this is the daughter I want." And he kind of was like, "Oh, okay, I know I promised you one. Here you go." Now, initially, she was kind of that, what do they call it? The bride, the where you have to marry someone because your parents made a deal when you were young. So she went because it was an obligation. She understood that this deal was made and she had to go, and she didn't want to go. And, who wants to be kind of sold off by their parents? But that over time, he treated her very well. He, made her the queen of the underworld and kind of treated her in a way that she did fall for him, but very much wanted to be with her mother. Actually, it was funny because I almost feel like it's like my daughter and I, and that, she really loved him, but also missed her mother. And he didn't want her to have to choose because he felt that if she had to choose, she wouldn't pick him. So he gave her the pomegranates because the myth of the pomegranates was if your captor, quote unquote captor, gave you food, then you would always return. So he gave her the pomegranates so that she would always come back after spending time with her mother. But that she told her father, I love him and I do want to be with him, but I love her and I want to be with her. And it was an agreed upon, you'll spend half your time with your mother and half your time with your husband.
Now, this is a myth, and it's a myth, again, told to explain the changing of the seasons. And I do feel that myths should be living. You should know what it was, but a lot of times things should adapt, and we need to look at things through a different lens sometimes. Who was the person that told this story? Where did it come from? And why did they tell the story? What did they stand to gain from it? And so, if it was told particularly through the lens of misogyny or through colonization, if we've done something to a goddess to pull her power away from her, we need to reframe that and look at it differently. The Persephone myth bugs me a little bit because I do want to give her strength. I do want to give her agency, but I also feel like the retelling now that turns Persephone and Hades into some sort of love-struck power couple also completely erases the fact that he didn't come up and get to know her. He rose up out of the ground, snatched her so fast that her belt dropped, and her best friend that was with her cried and turned herself into a puddle because she was so distraught.
But the story I've come to know starts prior to that, that he had met her prior to that and he didn't snatch her up until after. Like, I am still shocked that we have different versions of this.
Well, the modern retelling, again, is basically the whole I can fix him trope. To me, it sounds like this guy rapes her, holds her against her will, and now she's got, Stockholm syndrome and thinks she's in love with him.
See, I see it kind of like that, kind of like Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast?
Also a shitty story. He's
I
a
love
really
that
shitty
Disney
guy.
movie.
Well,
Oh my
I
God.
know.
I'm taken aback. I am taken aback here.
Well, the Persephone and Hades myth is not a good story. There is a modern retelling of it that does try to make him into a not bad guy. He didn't rape her and kidnap her. They fell in love, and her mother was the one that's controlling and a bad person. And I don't know if I love that. I don't know how I feel about that. Yes, I love the idea that Persephone came into her power as a woman. She was a young girl with her mother. She went through something very traumatizing and very
But
shitty
became that queen.
and became a queen because of it. But I don't need for her to be in love with Hades. I don't need for her to fall in love with her rapist in order for this to be a strong story.
Damn. Damn. I don't even know what to say. Like my perception is blown right now.
There are some beautiful current myths about Persephone and Hades and how strong they are and what a wonderful, glorious underworld couple they are. And I don't want to take anything away from that because, again, myths change, stories change as people do, and I'm okay with that. But understand that where the story originally came from was rape and abduction and terror and being held against her will.
I seriously what? I watch too many Disney movies.
Even if he then tried to make it good for her and they did eventually have an agreement and a relationship, it's not a love story. It is a woman coming into her power despite all odds, but it's not a love story.
Damn. I don't even remember what the Disney movie was called, but maybe I watched that movie too much.
I don't think Hades is like the devil. I don't think he's a bad guy. I'm not ascribing to him like evilness. In that particular instance, yes, he did an evil, shitty act.
You see, I always thought it was Demeter as kind of like the helicopter mom.
Right. And so here you take this really great relationship, mother and daughter, and she is so upset that her daughter was kidnapped that she turned the world upside down. She literally turned off all growing things while she searched for her daughter with her best friend, Hecate.
Yeah, but that sounds like something I would have done when my daughter went to college. That doesn't mean I didn't need to cut the cord. I just felt like
Right.
it was more like she needed to cut the cord and get over it. Your kid's grown up.
And yeah, there's our messages there too. You know, if we tell the story that way, there can be lessons that you can learn there.
Maybe that was the lessons. Maybe that was the lessons I needed to learn with my own daughter, and that's how I warped the
Ooh, sure.
right.
Yeah, sometimes we're Persephone, sometimes we're Demeter, and sometimes we're fucking Hades. It just really depends on where you are.
Damn. So, anywho, for Imbolc, this is kind of when Persephone takes her underworld time, her duties, however, her punishment. I don't even know what to call it now because my perception is warped.
Even in the original myth, she did fully accept and fully perform that role of Queen of the Underworld, Queen of the Dead. She very much did take that. It's just the love story part that's a little sketchy. She fully grew into Queen.
This is the time when she is still underground as Queen of the Underworld, and it's time for her helicopter mom to realize she did just fine without her daughter, and that when she comes back in a few weeks, they can start up spring together.
Yeah, that's right. Because Persephone's in that period where she's moving up. She's heading back to her mother so her mom can get ready to bring spring back to the world. So in gardening, and I love this, there's a thing called the Persephone period. And what the Persephone period is, it begins the last day that has 10 full hours of daylight, starts the Persephone period. And that's right around Lammas, August 1st. And then after that, that's when Persephone begins her journey to the underworld. And she reaches it on Samhain. And now, on Imbolc, according to, and I looked this up, in Salem, Massachusetts, the first day that will have 10 hours of daylight, February 1st. And that is when
Oh,
Persephone,
yes. Hell yes. Hell
that's
yes.
the end of the Persephone period. So that is when she begins her journey from the underworld back up to the world to be back with her mother on Ostara. So this isn't spring. Imbolc is not spring, but it's
No.
those first stirrings. It's when Persephone is beginning her journey out of the underworld and her mother's starting to get happy enough to know that she's coming back, that you might see crocuses or snowdrops or those first shoots of grass.
Honestly, having been a Northeaster our whole lives, we are well aware that this is actually probably the beginning of the coldest part of
Right.
winter for us. For some damn reason, Imbolc to Ostara is the coldest point of the year here. It's like you have to go through hell before you can get to the rebirth and growth and warmth. You know
Right.
what I
Right.
mean?
It's the Kaliak. It's that old woman winter.
Trial by frozenness.
It's that old woman winter and she doesn't want to let go, right? This is her last gasp. This is when she's the angriest.
So Demeter is pissed because she's waited long enough for her daughter and wants her to come back now. I kind of feel that.
Right? When it's this cold, I can definitely feel it when I go outside, that's for sure.
No, I was thinking more the demanding my daughter come home part. But hey, I
That's
am
true.
kind of also a helicopter mom, so I feel this whole story.
There's lessons for all of us in this story, I guess. And that kind of fits with the groundhog myth, which is not a pagan thing. I think that's like a German weather thing. But it's coming up out of the ground. It's the same idea.
I look at it as a holy day with Punxsutawney, okay?
We talked in the winter season about going within, taking this time of quiet when the earth is sleeping and cold to do a lot of inner work, to go within on yourself, to work on your magic, work on your books of shadows.
But see, I look at Imbolc as almost like the list making, I love a damn good list.
You
The
do.
list making holiday,
Oh,
like what seeds am I going to plant for the next however long? What things do I need to get in order? You've had that time to be within. Now let's plot and plan next steps. Where are we
right.
going? Now that could just be my super over organized brain, but this is like organizational time, plotting and planning. That's the best way I can put it.
Just like Persephone is beginning her travels, her ascent up from the underworld, we are also coming up and out of that, plotting and planning, getting our gardens planned, thinking about the spring. What are we going to do? What festivals are we going to go to? What camping are we going to do this year?
What's your to-do list for the next however long?
Right? And Imbolc is one of those times when I like to get in my basement, pull everything out of the corners, pull out all my camping and gardening and outdoor equipment and clean it up and organize it.
What do I need to prepare?
Exactly.
List
Prepare.
making, I'm telling you.
I do love a good list myself. I love journaling. Bullet point journaling is also journaling. That works too.
Don't give me that bullet point journaling. It's called a list. Lists. You just try to make everything into journaling.
I do. It's true. It's very true. So, what are some of the things that you can do if you are wanting to celebrate Imbolc? If you're feeling that Persephone energy, the queen of the underworld waking up to spring?
For some reason, I'm all about the whole candle aspect of this
Hmm.
Sabbath. I like a good candle and that fire growing, because that's really what this is kind of
Yeah.
lighting the spark and that fire growing.
And Bridget is a fire goddess. She's fire and water, so you've got the snow, you've got the candles. It's perfect.
And one of the names for this holiday is also Candlemas. And I do kind of like that, get that spark going. Back to the whole getting organized. You got to light the spark before you get the flame. You got to have the flame before you can have the fire. And if you don't have the fire under your ass, where are you going?
And February 1st is a great time to light all the candles in your house. It's also a great time to re-bless your house.
And light a few birthday candles.
That's right. Lighting your candles in celebration of Layla. And the spirit of Layla will come and honor your house with abundance and cannabis and magic and witchcraft and all good things. All good things to your home. I do like milk, so if you want to put some milk out to honor the holiday and as an offering to the land spirits and to Saint Layla of the Weed, that would be cool too.
Now, quick question.
What's that?
I'm glad you said that actually, because I almost forgot. We had a listener ask, how do you handle, because milk is a popular thing for Imbolc, how do you
Hmm.
handle that if you are lactose intolerant or cannot have dairy and such things?
Well, you don't have to drink it to leave it out for the land spirits or to pour some out to honor the land or to honor new beginnings. It doesn't have to be something that you drink.
Yeah, my whole thing was if you were going to drink it, almond milk, soy milk, whatever milk substitute you use, it's all about intention. It isn't about what it came from.
You can also use honey. So, honey and bees are associated with Bridget and thoughts of spring, and also the color of honey, that gold color, looks like sunlight. Cheese, if you can tolerate cheeses, I know sometimes hard cheeses work, but cheese is fantastic for this as well. But baked bread, baked muffins, baked cookies, all these are wonderful ways to celebrate honey, especially because it has that golden color to celebrate the sun and the returning of sunlight. Again, that Persephone period, those 10 hours of sunlight start on February 1st.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Me either. I am so ready. By Imbolc, not only am I ready to get out and celebrate my birthday, but I'm also so excited to get out because the sun is coming back. You can notice that things are warmer and nicer and a little bit sunnier outside. That abundance of spring is right around the corner.
Well, and the calendar reminds me too.
Last year in our episode, you talked about the Salem fog and the Imbolc fog
Yes.
drinks that you had. They had Earl Grey tea, I believe, rosemary, lavender,
Vanilla as well.
vanilla, and some cream, right?
Actually it's like steamed cream.
Oh, okay.
But again, if you are lactose intolerant, it could be almond milk or soy milk or whatever. But to kind of make it the fog, it has to be steamed.
And lavender and rosemary are sacred to Bridget, so you could use those. Those are great. And for Persephone, there's always the pomegranates, dark chocolate. They represent that luscious queen of darkness as she prepares to return to the fresh newness and inspiration of the spring season. So you could work with those in ritual to represent Persephone still underground, the quiet and the dark that are still there, and honor that as you and she prepare to move upward and into the spring.
I'm not big on like just going to the store and getting a pomegranate and cutting it and gnawing on it. But this is the one time where, yes, that is absolutely the case.
You could also take a milk bath if you didn't want to drink the milk. You could also put a little bit of milk in your bath. It's supposed to be very, very good for your skin, and that's a good way to celebrate as well. Personally, I'm going to repot a bunch of plants because growing things are big for Imbolc. And since I can't grow a lot outside, I'm going to repot a lot inside. Maybe I'll pull out my Devon Hunter book.
That reminds me, I am going to have to post an update on my plants. Cats haven't killed them yet, people.
Yay.
Actually, let me tell you a little secret here. We're going to divert to the plants here since you brought them up. I have been doing a good job. I have been a good plant owner. I have two cats. I love them. They are assholes, and I don't understand what it is. I feel like they're eating them just to spite me. I've got new growth, I've got good growth, but we're not expanding at crazy, wonderful rates. And I swear to God, people, it is not because of me. The cats are demons, and I'm showing Layla right now to get her reaction, but like she can see that there's a bite hole.
I
There's a bite
see.
hole.
Yeah, it
Like,
looks like one of them's chewed down.
yes, but you see this one after they chewed it down, it's starting to grow back. Like I
Yeah.
am doing
You're doing great. I think they're trying to get their spring greens off of your spider plant.
like I've even put them by the window, like I've got
Wow,
new
look how
growth.
good that one's
like
doing.
like there's new growth, like I'm doing my best,
Shell, you're doing so good.
but if you look at this leaf right here that's like half eaten, like it's
Yeah.
not me. I'll post pictures, folks.
All right, so back to Imbolc. Whether you ascribe to the modern myths of Persephone, where she's in love with Hades and Hades is wonderful, or you ascribe to more of the original, there's a lot to be learned from that myth. It reminds us that rest and reflection and even the hard shit are essential. They're part of life's natural rhythms. They prepare us for growth and for renewal. And these hard situations, this story offers wisdom about transformation and resilience and the power of honoring cycles. And Persephone's dual role as both the queen of the underworld and the bringer of spring's renewal really mirrors the themes of Imbolc. The goddess Brigid, goddess of water and of fire. And Imbolc really sits on that threshold in that liminal space between the darkness of winter and the light of spring. This season can really teach us a lot about introspection and creativity and finding harmony in those transitions.
And I think our differing views on that is really kind of a good lesson for you to learn. And depending on the source of where you learned information can depend on your perception of it. So take in a lot of different sources and see what works.
There's something to be said for viewing these older myths through a different lens. We want to view them through an empowering lens. And sometimes, in the case of some of these myths, like a lot of the Norse myths, the Eddas, those were written by Christians. They took stories that had been handed down from person to person orally. Someone from outside that tradition interpreted them and wrote them down. And so that you kind of have to peel back the layers to find what the truth is instead of, how it was perceived by a different person. But the Persephone and Demeter myth, yes, it was in Greek and we translated it, but that's not something that we can peel away the misogyny from to find the real story. It's not like they told the story to break Persephone down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This wasn't told to take a powerful goddess and make her smaller.
Yeah.
So the original is a myth that explains the changing of the seasons through a tale of a mother's love and a young woman's journey to heal herself and reclaim her own power. And for some reason, people had to change it to a love story because, I don't know, everybody loves a bad boy or whatever. And I love a bad boy too, don't get me wrong. But telling it that way takes away a lot of Persephone's power and her agency by reducing that story of survival and strength to simply a love story.
I'm gonna read more into this because I'm just flabbergasted at our different views.
And it's not that I don't like reimagining myths. I mean, I do. I just want people to know where they come from, who told them, and why they were told in the first place. And then also know why they've been redone from a different perspective. What was the reason someone wanted to retell it?
I mean, I do understand that some folks in some cultures are kind of betrothed to others, maybe against their will or what have you, because of customs and whatnot. But I have heard, and not that I am any expert on this by any means, but I have heard of some of those arranged marriage. Oh wow, that was what I was looking for. You do hear stories of some of these arranged marriages where like, you know, one or both people go in miserable and apprehensive because like who the hell wants to marry a stranger that your parents made a deal about? But they go into it and they do eventually kind of create a bond and create a love for one another. And it isn't all horrible in the end. And I'm not saying that there isn't cases where it is, because there absolutely are. But there are arranged marriages that can have a quote unquote happily ever after. And I guess that was how I kind of perceived that story, was like an arranged marriage that just did end up having a happily ever after.
If you look at it through that, I can definitely see, the empowerment from it. But even in an arranged marriage, it's usually the son of one family is arranged, to marry the daughter of another family. But this was even worse than that. This is your dad's, first of all, it's your dad's brother, but this is your dad's age friend. This is your dad's contemporary who's like, hey, your daughter's hot. Tell her to marry me, which is very different.
Like I said, maybe I just Disneyfied it for my brain.
I don't know. I have a hard time with Disneyfying things. But the lesson about, letting go of your daughter when she grows up, that's a good one, to look at it from that lens. And I hadn't really thought of that until you brought it up. That's a really good point.
Yeah, kind of cutting the cord is the only way I can think of it at the moment, but kind of take that step back, kind of let them be the adult they are now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And as a parent who's had to do that, that's hard.
So, all right. So let's bring this back from Disneyfying stories to like magical and witchcraft. And so, how can whichever version of this myth, the going within, the going down to the underworld and being queen of the underworld, accepting that power, and then coming back up and bringing spring with you, that's a big responsibility. How can we apply that?
Like I said, kind of make those lists. What are my magical goals? What seeds am I looking to plant? What are those stirrings within that I need to act on?
What lessons did I learn in this dark period that I can bring forward with me into the spring?
Right, you've had this time to reflect. Okay, now what? No, it's kind of the now what phase, take all of that and how are you going to put that into action? What's your action plan? And, magically, sometimes it's just going to be lighting those candles and what's my plan?
January 29th is the new moon. And then February 1st is the first day of 10 hours of sunlight. It's Imbolc. And I love the idea of taking that time.
It almost seems like the opposites.
It's the dark going into the light, right?
Right, right.
You can take that time, the 29th, this new moon that's coming up, to write your list, to write down the things that you're leaving behind in the dark half of the year. And what are you going to bring with you as you walk up from the underworld to the spring? What are you going to plant? So what are you leaving behind and what are you bringing with you? I love that. So take that time from the 29th to the 1st. And then on the 1st, Chelle won't because she hates early mornings, but maybe go out and look at the dawn, see the dawn come up.
Who looks at the dawn?
Weirdos like me who get up way too early because we can't sleep. But get up, look at the dawn, and celebrate the sun. Celebrate that.
Actually, this is a favorite time of mine for fire scrying. Here's why, because if you start looking at, so you got your candle here, and you are looking at this wick, you are looking at the nothingness of the wick, the coldness. As you light that, and I like to look at it as you light it, you watch it go from that nothingness, that fire creating, that glow. What is that spark saying? Yeah, fire scrying for me, good time this year because I do kind of get that Candlemas vibe. I keep that whole aspect of it, that the light from within and fire to me is very action related, related to the tarot, very swords, very action. Where am I going? What am I doing? How am I getting it done?
This time of year, that action is what you're going to need to push you into the next phase. And I also like spirals for this time of year, represents that coming out, start from the middle and draw spirals spiraling out. Combine it with fire scrying. If you can have some scrap paper or your book of shadows while you're fire scrying and just relax and start to draw spirals and just kind of let your hand go, do a little automatic writing while you're doing your fire scrying, that can really help you get in touch with your subconscious.
Yeah, and I was also thinking, burn away the things that you've realized you must kind of get rid of. Use that fire to kind of burn it away.
Yeah, again, starting to prepare. It's a little mental spring cleaning. Burn up that stuff that you don't want to take with you.
That's a good way to explain it. Mental spring cleaning.
There you go. See, and then write it down, journal it, get it away.
You had to get the word in there. You had to get that journaling word in there, didn't
I
you?
did, because although it's nice to burn the things that you want to get rid of, it's scientifically proven that you are more likely to follow through with things if you write them down. So making your lists and writing in your journal the things that you want to grow, I think it's like 42% more likely to do it if you journal
Blah, blah, blah.
it. So, spring is coming, even though it's bitter freaking cold right now. And Persephone is the badass queen of the underworld, whether her husband is a complete and total dick or a loving, caring dude or not.
Yeah, and there's a lot of us that have been married to that guy before. So.
It's true. The whole I can fix him. I can fix him, I swear. That's a
No,
real
you
thing.
can't.
No, you can't. No. But celebrate the returning of the sun. Celebrate these new daylight hours. Celebrate Bridget and Demeter and Persephone and all these goddesses that encompass so much more than just spring energy.
And let's all take a moment and celebrate the goddess Layla. Happy birthday. I love you.
I love you too. Thanks.
Now, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, all the places. Back on the broomstick. We're there. We've had a holiday season where our posting has slowed a bit, but we're there. We're present. So hit us up.
We will see you next week, and we will hopefully have a solarium coming up by the end of the month as well. We are still taking suggestions, but we're closing in quick on our recording date. Some popular ideas that have come in so far are cannabis magic, how to do sigils. A couple people have asked for spooky stories, a la the Stoned Witches Hour. And we've also been asked a few times for Chelle's and my witchy origin stories, as well as our best friend witchy meet cute. So get your ideas in quick, or it will be one of those. Until next time, be wise, be wicked, and as always,
Keep it witchy.